What's up, guys? Legacy is a new pickleball company that launched back in September of 2022, and I heard a lot of rumblings on Facebook about this company. Still, I mostly disregarded them because they didn't indicate that their paddle really differed at all from the sea of raw carbon fiber paddles on the market, so I wrongly assumed it was a clone of everything else. Well, I suppose this is why they say don't judge a book by its cover, because I was wrong. The Legacy is anything but a regular raw carbon fiber paddle. This paddle can be purchased for $145 at the time of recording this video, and you can get it discounted by 10% if you use code PBStudio at checkout. The normal price for this paddle is $150, but due to their back order for February, they have dropped the price slightly. This paddle is a 16mm thick polymer core paddle, elongated shape, 5.3-inch handle, 4.125-inch grip circumference, and a Toray T700 carbon fiber face. The swing weight is 120, and the static weight is 7.7 ounces to 8.3 ounces. Additionally, this paddle features thermoforming and injected foam. According to Google, thermoforming is the process of heating a thermoplastic material and shaping it in a mold. Here's an image to help illustrate this. What this means for a pickleball paddle that is thermoformed is that you could take the edge guard off of the paddle and it would still be sealed off, also known as an edgeless pickleball paddle. Usually when you take off the edge guard, you can see the exposed polymer. If you take the edge guard off of the Legacy Pro, you'll see that the core is hidden. So why do these paddles need an edge guard? Wouldn't it be better to have no edge guard? Well, the answer is not necessarily. Many people believe that edgeless paddles are better because they would have fewer mishits on the paddle's edge. The thought behind this seems reasonable, but in reality, it's not really how it works. Most of the time, paddles with edge guards have better edge performance than paddles that don't. This is because the edge guard provides more than just protection for your paddle. Edge guards add perimeter weighting to your paddle, which can act similarly to adding lead tape. You may have noticed that some edgeless paddles, such as the Selkirk Labs Project 003 and Selkirk Vanguard Power Air, advertise foam injected into the perimeter of the paddle. In the case of an edgeless paddle, this is very helpful for making outer edges feel more solid. Instead of using an edge guard on the outside, they're just putting the weight on the inside of the paddle. But anyways, the Legacy Pro also features injected foam, but instead of being between the edge guard and the thermoforming seal, it's actually between the core and the thermoforming. So if you took the edge guard off, you wouldn't actually be able to see the injected foam. Legacy and myself made videos trying to snap a thermoformed paddle over our knees, and we couldn't do it. My video example was with a Carbon 1X, but the owner of 60 also sent me a video privately of him attempting to do the same, and the paddle wouldn't budge. So these paddles are significantly more durable than their previous raw carbon fiber counterparts. This is important because everyone in pickleball has been asking for more durable paddles, and companies are finally starting to deliver. On their website, they also mentioned something about layering the sheets of carbon fiber to create a new feel. I took my microscope to look at the surface, and it appeared quite different from other Toray T700 paddles I have seen in the past. In these pictures, the weaving pattern is nearly 2 to 4 times tighter on the Legacy Pro than the Carbon 1X 16mm. The pattern on the Carbon 1X is how almost all the other raw carbon fiber surfaces look. Even to the touch, you can tell the difference, and it really doesn't feel that gritty if you're familiar with how other raw carbon fiber paddles usually feel. Two more things I want to touch on quickly. The handle length is 5.3 inches, and I was worried that this would make two-handed backhands difficult. I personally didn't have an issue. When you compare it to a 5.5-inch handle, you can feel the difference, but for my average hand size, I didn't find that 5.3 inches was very bad. There is a noticeable difference between 5.5 inches and 5.3, but not enough for me to complain. If you have larger hands, 5.3 may not be sufficient for you. And now that we've mentioned that, I want to take this time to talk about how the neck tapers, because I've mentioned this in previous reviews, and I want people to really understand how important this is. I took a Power Air, a Legacy Pro, and a Carbon 1X 16mm and put them all side by side. And the difference is shocking. The Power Air Invicta has a 5.25-inch handle, which you see on the left, and then in the middle, I have the Legacy Pro. Now notice how different they look, even though we're talking about 5.25 versus 5.3. And this is because the Power Air honestly has a really bad taper at the neck, which makes it hard to choke up on, where the Legacy tapers much better and it's easier to choke up on. In fact, The handle length looks very similar to the Carbon 1X 16mm. Now, if you look at how the Carbon 1X tapers at the neck, it's even a little less or even a little more narrow, so you can choke up even a little bit higher than the Legacy, which does make it feel longer. But all of that to say, sometimes the handle length is not the only thing you need to look at. Of course, there's no spec to tell you how the neck is tapering, but just be aware that that matters quite a bit. Lastly, I want to talk about the swing weight. It came in at 120. This is 7 points lighter than a Yola Hyperion CFS 16mm. I have learned recently that once there's about a 10-point difference between paddles, the swing weight change becomes very obvious to most players. While there isn't a 10-point difference between the Hyperion and Legacy, it is pretty close, and I definitely notice a difference. And the Legacy doesn't feel nearly as heavy as the Hyperion. Another test I've been working on is the balance point of paddles. I checked the balance point of a Hyperion, and it was several points more head heavy than the Legacy. I would share the numbers, but without having a big sheet for you to compare it against, the numbers really aren't going to mean anything to you. All you need to know is that the swing weight is lower, as well as the balance point, which makes the paddle feel pretty manageable. All right, there is a new king of spin in town, and it's the Legacy Pro. In my testing, it achieved a result of 1903 RPM. This puts it past the former king, the Selkirk Vanguard Power Air. Now, I want to be clear before people go crazy. The difference between 1851 and 1903 is negligible and will never be noticed in actual gameplay. Regardless, the Legacy Pro is the highest paddle in my paddle stats spreadsheet now. Now, I promise I'm not going to mention this in every single review, but I did do a stare at grit test on the Legacy Pro, and it passed with flying colors. I was actually shocked to see how high the RPMs are and how low the stare at numbers were. It actually had margin to play with. Like, it could still go up and probably increase the spin even more. So whatever they're doing with this new pattern on the face, it clearly seems to be working because the spin is absolutely incredible and it's not even going over the legal limit like a lot of paddles right now. All right, this paddle is going to be a banger's dream. The ball flies off the face of this paddle. This is most noticeable at the net when you're in a fast hand exchange. Many times I would sail the ball past the baseline and I didn't even think I was swinging that hard. And when I played against people with this paddle who had it under control, it takes away so much time from you. They come up and just do a small little flick and you're used to the power of other paddles and all of a sudden the ball's just in your chest. Like, it is actually shocking how much faster the ball comes. You really do feel like you have a lot less time to react. The Legacy also has a unique feel compared to other power paddles. It's soft and plush like a Hyperion, but the ball comes off the face way faster. The best comparison I can draw is that the softness and speed of this paddle reminds me a little bit of EVA foam paddles like the Diadem Vice. They feel soft when you hit gently, but when you speed up even slightly, the ball just flies off the face. I'm not saying that this paddle feels like EVA foam, because it doesn't, but the sensation of how fast the ball comes off the paddle is very similar to the Vice in my opinion. I cannot think of any other paddle on the market with such a high dwell time that also launches the ball off the paddle this fast. The feel for volleys, drives, and blocks is simply satisfying. It's the polar opposite feel of something like the Pro Kenix Black Ace, which achieves its power through a very stiff and rigid face. Frequently, I found myself wanting to absolutely murder the ball in a hands battle, short serve returns, or overheads because of the power I had at my fingertips. Like the Power Air, the problem is that just because you have the power available does not mean you need to use it all the time. I frequently sailed easy balls long because I knew I had the power to crush it. You really need to loosen your grip and compact your swing with this paddle because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time keeping the ball in. Most of the time, I could swing at 50% of my max power and the ball would still move as fast or faster when I swung 80% or more with my Selkirk Labs Project 003. The power on this paddle is effortless and feels incredibly satisfying. Going back to paddles like the 002 feels very clunky in comparison. This is the most powerful 16mm paddle on the market right now. It's incredible to me that so much power can be packed into a body this thick. The unique thing about this paddle is that despite having a lot of power, its plush feel makes it seem like you also have pretty good control. Initially, when I started playing with this paddle, I noticed I was popping up easy dinks, thirds, and blocks, and I thought I would be able to get it under control, but throughout my play testing, I never really got it to a spot I was happy with. It did improve as I used the paddle more, but when I played games that matter, I found myself missing routine shots. I tried so many different things to get it under control, such as loosening my grip, slowing my body movement, or brushing the ball more. Unfortunately, none of this really helped me get it under control the way that I expected. I also needed to be more mindful of my paddle angle, where I didn't really have to do that with my 003 or Carbon 1X. Now, I want to be clear, because several people have received the wrong impression when I talk about the paddle like this. The paddle is not entirely uncontrollable. Many people have claimed that the transition from a Hyperion or other raw carbon fiber paddles was not an issue for them. Many people in my Discord server were baffled about my opinion of the paddle because they don't feel they have any of the problems that I'm describing. This could be more of an issue with myself than it is with the paddle. The conclusion I've come to is that you need to be the type of player who has soft hands and likes the paddle to do all of the work in your stroke. Unfortunately, that's not really the type of player I am right now. I need to work on loosening my grip, and I'm used to paddles where I have to swing quite a bit. This isn't like your usual power paddle. Because of the soft, plush feel that it offers, I do think many people will find it easier to control than a Black Ace or 002. And on that same note, part of why I think it'll be easier to control is that the Legacy Pro has a really good sweet spot. I would say it's one of the best on the market right now. My default choice for best paddle sweet spot has always gone to the Yola Hyperion CFS 16mm, and that thing has a really large sweet spot. And honestly, I think the Legacy Pro gives it a run for its money, or at the very least is equal in sweet spot. I never noticed a point where the sweet spot didn't feel great. So I would place the Legacy Pro well above average regarding the sweet spot. Of course, getting out to the edges will be worse than the sweet spot, but there's much more energy going into the ball on the edges than there are with your average paddle. In fact, that's one of the first things many people would note if they are coming from a 002, Power Air, or Black Ace, that this paddle felt way easier to use because the sweet spot is just huge. I don't have any issues to report with the durability, and I know most of you will be curious about how the spin holds up. Unfortunately, without a month plus of hard use on the paddle, it's really hard to say how it will hold up. This surface will likely wear out, similar to Carbon and Electrum. The only brand I've really noticed though that has faster degradation on average is Yola. After my roughly 25 to 30 hours on the Legacy, under a microscope, I can see small tears in the carbon fiber, but there are only a few very small instances of this on my paddle face, and the majority of the paddle looks pretty pristine. I want to mention two other small things. One, this paddle grabs a lot of ball dust. In fact, it grabs so much ball dust that after a play session, people think you can see the core through the face because the ball leaves imprints on the whole face of the paddle. You can't actually see through the face, it's just a ridiculous amount of ball dust imprints on the paddle. The second thing is that it seems like you can scratch the paddle face. Several people have noted white marks on their faces that the carbon eraser or other similar tools couldn't deal with. I have a few small ones on mine, but this appears to be mostly cosmetic and does not impact performance. When I look at it under a microscope, there's no damage to the carbon fiber, so maybe it's just the fibers getting discolored. I'm not really sure what it is, but it didn't seem to be hurting the paddle. As much as I love this paddle, I don't know that I'll be switching to it for doubles, at least not for now. I tried extremely hard to adjust my game and make this paddle work, and no matter how hard I tried, it just wasn't working the way I wanted. My resets, drops, and defense game could have been better by my standards. I never felt very confident, and I was always afraid of hitting the ball too soft and going into the net, or pushing it just a little too hard and giving my opponents an easy ball to crush. I'm a bit disappointed I haven't been able to adjust quickly because there are so many elements about this paddle that are awesome. You don't have to swing hard to generate great power, it has amazing build quality, and the best spin in the game. It's nearly everything I want in a paddle, except my soft game isn't where I need it to be. And that's kind of rough because when you go from this paddle back to other paddles, a lot of the time it feels like a downgrade, at least for what I'm looking for in a paddle. I find the Legacy to be one of the most fun paddles I've ever played with. So I do really want my soft game to work on this, but for the time being, it still needs more work. I also feel very confident saying that this is the hardest hitting paddle in pickleball. And it's not because it feels hard when you hit the ball. Again, it's got a soft feel, but the velocity off the face is absolutely ridiculous. Again, the best thing I can compare it to is it's almost like having a legal diadem vice, but with more spin. The thing just feels absolutely lethal on the court. Now, even though I couldn't make this paddle work for doubles, it is amazing for singles. And I don't want people to think it's only a singles paddle, because it isn't by any means. That's just where I saw my game excel the most with the Legacy Pro. You can rip drives with hardly any effort, and you have absurd amounts of spin, which is always helpful in singles. I can't say enough great things about it for singles. I honestly think it's probably one of the best paddles you could buy if you're a singles player. Several times on the court, I found myself hitting a winner that I had no business hitting and then just standing there in disbelief. Since I will be using this paddle for singles, I think there is a good chance I'll continue to dabble with it for doubles and see if eventually it fits my gameplay. I'm very interested in making it work, but for the time being, the Carbon 1X 16mm is going to be my paddle of choice for doubles. I also want to note that many pros have tried this paddle and they're all obsessed with it. Now, unfortunately, I can't disclose which pros it is because they're all under contracts with different companies, but every single one of them that tries this paddle says it is the best paddle they have ever hit. And honestly, for the pro game, this really might be one of the best paddles they could use. In fact, many of those pros have gone back to their companies and told them, you need to make a paddle just like this. That is how much these people like this paddle, and I think that tells you just about everything you need to know about it. Regardless of my experience with the soft game, this is by far one of the best paddles on the market. Easily in the top 3 most competitive paddles you can buy right now, and it will become one of my go-to recommendations for many players. If any big name companies were selling this same paddle, it would easily be sold for $230 or higher. The fact that you can purchase this paddle for $150 is absolutely mind-boggling. Before hitting the Legacy Pro, my best value recommendations for raw carbon fiber was the SOK Halo. Its primary problems were that it was a bit on the softer side and the spin could have been more competitive with higher priced raw carbon fiber paddles. Now, the Legacy Pro is here for only $10 more. It's the highest RPM paddle I've ever tested, significantly more durable, and it has incredible power. You're guys going to see me compare a lot of the future paddles to the Legacy Pro because honestly, I think it set the bar really high for what a performance paddle should be. So there you guys go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.